Kalmelaine
Podolulu pok iwi atrapat al tutau ngara Psalm chapter 33 sel verse 6 manai nama sel 12 mra 15 mulk mo bulul aber rogir molu rarubak molu ringi arugul aber ablul ab sira lolgoi ablul aba ulbiok abek kaltogoy am loringi elogiu ameire ringi sel 12 mra 15 sel verse 12 mra 15 yang mu ngal tanga tablu elo Dios rarubak tangal tanga talab al ngili titiri del modal arubak angar ayang aba e omes el merio emes tri rarugul ab yang arsel lore del ringi e omes el merio el mortrigel rogui el kiera ablul ab ngomio barogui lul taswir e madenge arogui el hombre lir abodolulu Damal Dios lola barogul klisi rayang ma utama kaweruba ka ngarbab sisi kapkal atangakla emeang elegir rogul ngarngi rayang ma utama akloklem maring the kloklem erubak esabem ruliangi dil adul mo sisi atangakla melal tutau agi otong siakap kallen klem emrenga sulemra el alsils no se emlol gisra mam ajuk mo so Israel sel el alsils mule gel bekkel gimorul gimrenga sulemra president ramam el nalmut el merbelau gimrenga sulemra osab aklem maulaga ruim el moringin bas belto verbelau enga gidon nalmut el mei magi mrenga sulemra al tutau ultragok rarbek lab le gorgau angaru ea gyo si press conference ra gimreng asulem ra blum mamel mi mokla man so amel bekal Wednesday gi me omura press conference ra mam e ultragok le ro gule gorgau lengwai sel gi blam iwir al tutau ngarba be o mesra blul ad rogir medengi ro gul gi mondas ma gi ro gul gi morul aku terga klitial press conference le goral tutau presidente makiabinet rengi Olngita ulagaruim mausab aklem mamakrar tira gelu relir tiram rura bekal sil segera belum mamra belur belau makamamar aber belau magil darsa tira lal sil so the city press conference le gorgau olngitra bud gorgau umbol sel malmol ngara drong lam mabel tikre ngau agi di mereng asulem e darsa igarogui marang klila Dios el adam ma Dios el ngal ma Dios el edaring amen.
Amen. Okay. Maka poto welcome ra daitorio ra Blubelau Surangal Whips Junior. President.
Man sulang kontrolen sokal mutel tel mereka sulam Pastor Williams rang lungu ma dasar ada tutau na umrah segida malangal tengah terbelu le kado Dios terbelu eblo lo mula program regida lobang lungu eblo close lobang lungu man sulang Suatu mutel tel kontrole bodo susrai bodul maraklai maru bugul belau bilung ebiraklai mar masil belau President of Senate Rockmans Paulus, Marugul Senators, Speaker Sabino Anastasio, Marugul Delegates, Chief Justice Mirai Galau, Marugul Justices, Governors, Lators, Marbekal Other Belau. Ngara ngayang al muraho charigi, Madrid ngana iklar ablur belau al sil siluk no sabil uk goda gamli diu le adadu. Kita kontrolen suatu mo otiak tol klingit tereng moldar sanglung eden morar adara ablura FSM bra upna modibus ra adara oleh dalingi amle Vice President George ablura FSM el tiam nombre el weekend tengara klol el bur el altam adara FSM le covid amla spreader community ma dolulu el girir dire kalau sultame dota sanglung eden morar adara Marshall dire kalau ngaria namu la community spreader ablurir ma walau wadi laran dire mal ngara klol al klingit dengan elamu kada barsang lu eden mortir kita nomu lagel tumas state visit sergi dra al June ma melmutra kasun semna umre kawal el trui el state visit delal wige kada sera kotruiro ramla sedal morgi igual kasun se kada mara ason sorol kadamla ange mitra dra ason sorol yaklu kada ukmorang ayangal elmo mesa tablo toy kada mora ground breaking ara abes el project ra ayangal yo si time entelera del mitra ada ayangal open trail ada du ulgira la qabel men tergit diso kan mereka sudah agaro good state el blada bori maraf el tiramley leng kada blolo ay sura se kita msiung kita adara am siung la buai mengarale dan meralo dingel mestreate alam togerang idilger o ay sa alitatud on masir kita raul das sura se mgrada mutmuk rabal men tergit el mongil mashura adara blur belo maran mereka sulit tergel adal mereka meeting mom kamang lagel meeting le mom mereka 3 o'clock ya mereka sudah la Mr. Solel diri kami ukne help el moderator imora meeting gumra lo se arada mimok loger ager ese akhlab gale la bloda dakira mitchungil government dia kam kiterger dia idil gera giren moger ma aisa gira del small den partranga ledel ngara amalinse el government diri el government gira del togorba mereka accountable el mora adra blu maran mereka sudah adra blu mereka meeting maldi masal belum la ngayau ma ablilio of course ngayang ala aklo mato obe mairai mamal gayo we look forward to seeing those people you know sel dora la igal state visit en toga tappi en ngile kamil adra media blolo lagi sa igal issue of course ada mal concern na toga SS kada mamgara toga SS we need to do something about SS atogora pension ang importante el donya sega priority we have to address them en toga tra ral se drogi will masamo and of course krol el canción adra blo ase ala la dran okla de gyal motago ala dengi ala alu mun gadal taten naiger tablo al basra oceans mun gada dok milele a bus program mun emna mo song sagal bas mun namo gyad ukmut el increase but se apart rahel para adro ase magrada dol mol el tial bes tretal ngari magrada tiblo mo song sa expense ad mol mol ansi en moriore el oru la yel ngot mokal tribal ok cosa da yel expense tir di kadiri kan mo yelo ase yel ok ngas orgi del mora PPUC help ra dengi mandirigal ngari didirigal mo songos kada makatakatang al humra lo hace tiada gal beser toiling in 2016 ang lodar sa alla lo hace raise the minimum wage I say President Ramasam le proposal say it needs to go to 850 by 25 cents a year well we're now 6 years later Mr. Clay still kadiri gamil the sell all it's a wrong time well it's always the wrong time the as a leadership rablu and sometimes we have to make tough decisions and we need to move forward and we need to ospea aigel ukora klangao the energy the ma expertise are expert sub milita o sigre selungiral dogi matara hotel all mle tapigera adro bila say well ade kalungil the raise minimum wage and they go the government they said there are for the raise of the other government so sel yo sang angal bleda submit ni era dora el moram brigela ulotin mor olbira kalula lo say no we have money we just need to prioritize it lo say arogul adlo ora government el tira civil servant mga state governments agi namo time el dolngas aududir al sal ngasongos en seguida kalol mal klugara tal sales or $60 rabek el payday radungul maratarak en taltela el mail dart mogol maklu ngase dro ase Mr. Telamsen help para adra 1 gallon lulu rabek el sales di awalan cloud to trela the focus era aududir al other tir over trigagi del other aurora pay tax trigagi del other aurora contribute more SS trigagi del other aurora contribute more a pension fund mang ngaria plol melgori ngari setting la maxra moros or se kada plol mga survival adal lomal and we did do that kada make sure ngaria pension kada make sure angas aklela ara la dalong ok lamura SS mung diol ngas oise ndi tiga ngar bebul tel gar tiga dalom lu urtiang tiga dal aurora bekalsis tiga gida gira concentrate tir gira dan make sure tira amsisi ngaria agar gari help and make sure tiga ngar bab as ilgut mokla aigel elnya olis pal radang clear mang kada malmol maloro lo mangel albira kalulaw kada mla isal wasay gida a source of revenue gid gida abodong tmok emal mangale ertil wasay aigel previous and minimum wage sira da pas emle tablo la amrael ari ala minimum wage ngari ala ra salary scale ra government may gagirel kadolgit rase ldakal marael salary scale ra government ma minimum wage ilang amokte gagirel it should be across the board ngirel moral betla magada akpadil wase ngari ala ngara a senate edri ngari ala ngara a house magada urelo bentri hope wase sedel gaiga se will come to some solution el help para adrablu di gumra lo hacia dol mol di dalal walo mal di busa vice president mlo rakwam luk ale go aiso vice president ke mlo rakwam mlo ugera donation el bol biscuit alliance club 100 car seat luk kirel tel tora safety ma rangal ge ngara rail di kada bol el spera tokor seragi senator asen digatse di dalal walo aral mal di dalal walo mo bedeng mo ella ragas so kadolngi trase I think imna mo time let's move forward magada ye market mak lo lom gel olbira kolulaw el murutian marklau to trel toy adiregal el gira del mom dagni ase ngaria la ngaram dal olbira kalulaw se la ra SS se el proposal la ra SS a milgat mok lo ase gira del raise ra tax contribution ar adal lower al mo 9% 7 and mo 9% se ngara ulang tiraw do las umra consultant sel mle help rigid mo mlaria symposium gadum lot magya esel mlob la takar sel meeting ar magi karel adam lot magya ase bere lagadong sa la igel dudo del mor trigal tira milisra ido trigal del lado mar de madre lo hacer lagadong sa do do mortir vai do sigro ase magrada rula do del mo le do del mo clo el mosoismo metial SS ase el di mol malngani dice de gadil el increase ra a tax rigel hara rigel SS indiregal increases their retirement age. Mang kada men senyo ase ulugum kada raise ra minimum wage dire kat sobak tito mang ada kat sal increases their tax. Ay gira dalong men tial arangalela system rigi de wasingara igel si adel motma ke gutmok la igel meso isbra ISS el wal gargargel atter igel motto lesel gotro gor klo tutela la de qalsada SS abol qoso من كده كدوسي جاي رجول تقل الواسين غير يجي سال الأولى الموسو يسمى غير تقول البدون الواسين تلها 1560 تيادي مو مدرع tax that's not true yes غير tax الحرارة الال time غير wages tax say of course are over 8,000 and 12% غير ISS tax ال 7% غير HEF ال 2 I mean 2.5%. I give all that in 19%. I see. So instead of 20% awal al mga RC. So still at the end of the day abang 50 middle $50 out of the $60. Or in sum sell $1,500 $1,200 a year. And of course with the new tax reform system the ruling next year it real musukura 15,000 and less will get all of that tax money back. So they'll sell SS part, detail income tax part. So sell up to 12% or 8%. Mang ayegida adola sa melbrule o meserti ala ngala ayosong ang rigid imran mo prioritize sa klangar other belaw agirel got magrado help para other belaw ra other clear المطريب لونين لسيلغوت الكلول ديسا أرجع كده مال دي مرايل الممسح أسكوية مرايل ديال متقاضى الأخرى بلور بينه من اختيمك بو يجيد يقدر مقطع دي بوس من بس متقاجر بايم شو كان مسات الله chief negotiator minister of finance لين of island مخلو أي سيجل لورولة ولدي قوم ده سك منارجر منور ملامي Sulang Raigel Tole birthday wishes congratulations Sulang.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, all of you here and those listening on the radio. Regarding the trip that I took 2 weeks ago to Washington, D.C., I was accompanied by 2 of our advisory group members and several technical team members to visit I went to visit with Special Envoy Yoon and his team on the 3rd and 4th. Around this time, the Special Envoy was also meeting with the Marshall Islands and the Federated States of Micronesia. You have to hold it?
No, you don't have to. Yeah, continue.
So when we went to Washington, we presented our request to the United States. I'll just hold it. We presented our request to the United States. We did not present a package to them before our visit. They received the package when we went to the visit. This was a 2-day meeting, half-day meetings. And we presented our request to the United States, and then we followed with open and frank discussions with the United States. There were several questions that they posed back to us, some that we were unprepared to respond to. We didn't have full information, so we agreed to come back to Palau and continue to provide further information to support our request to them. We also expect that there will be a visit from a Special Envoy by the end of the year. As part of the compact discussions, you need to understand that these discussions are part of a review. The discussions involve looking at Palau's needs and how progress is being made to the objectives of our treaty with the United States. Those are the basis for our discussion. These happen several times throughout the compact. This is the second time we are doing review, and there's another one in 10 years. So we can expect to continue to work with the United States. Another part of the agreement is something called the Advisory Group on Economic Reform, which was created during the first review. I'd like to let you know that next week we are going to have our first meeting after 12 years. For this group, we have very high-level economists that will be visiting. It'll be a whole week worth of activities, and I think that this will also inform the discussions with the United States. So let me leave it at that. I know I keep getting cut off. People on the radio must be wondering what's going on.
Maybe I'll share a little bit about our thoughts and where we are. Controlling ida 2024 is coming up soon. Misera bomur administration rigid am le first del dal mur amrigel wa se gel duldar sel mergid tegal se adel gongi ngwa belal lo tetelut muruli misera first trip rigid mur Washington tian nombre gara August me admitera Secretary of State, Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Director of CIA, other National Security Counselor American, en ayegid el toya dul gortir dul ay sertilo asegida klo al banglet sel dumura uk geyzarid en litatula ula arbatوغ الغلقيت هذه مرا الملوك المرابلور أمريكا قد ما نقول قوس عليه من جراد المطمئن يقول قوس عليه هذا دول وسكر ولا وسه هذا ضرور تيال دلويل الممسيسي إنجري لوني رقميو لوني رقمهم من برنا سولا لا chief negotiator نيام لامور أوريور كده عملنا مقطعة المير نجايد الأمباسادور يونل ولا appointnya President Biden المورتيال دروال من هذا دايلو أسيلان معمول أوريور مرار كروتو تريلا كده أبوظ بلغتاقل بيجي كده أسبوع مع البغلاد تجد الوقت رجل Economic Advisory Group المرة الألويك عملنا كروتو تريلا ملار سيل agreement تريجي 2009 عملنا كده المغتموق لندين تري ميرو رجل دي ملغ المغتموق من كروتو تريلا ما يتريجان من دريجة لو تبدأ يلو الدسوير اللي أي سريد راسه أي جايد ما جايد أدورو لين سبيسيا أبلواد المهم سيسي من أسي أدلو أسي كذا مرال بدولو إيه ده أدرال بدولو سيجدا ده هذا بقى أسوأ بقارن درين دخل سودا أبلواد على تتلوت من سولان chief negotiator minister اللي متأريد المرا واشنطن بس لما تملا ميديا توقع قريره
Jangan mau kita kurang ni naon. Dutai Presiden kaum Minister Uduy. Question nga ke Mr. Uduy tial ligara compact. Last week there was a press release from the Office of the President. Specifically, identify community concerns that were raised in the discussion. FEMA, Veterans Services, continuation of federal programs, and postal services. So what other areas of needs specifically did Palau also discuss with the United States?
Thank you for that question. We have several areas that we are requesting. If you want to boil it down, federal programs is a very key part of that discussion with the United States. In addition to that, we are asking for support in several areas with a general objective of trying to improve our economic resilience as a country. And this takes into account additional challenges that were not reflected in the initial compact, such as climate change, such as pandemics, things that we could not anticipate at the time. So we are working together with the United States to address those challenges as part of these discussions. The request, as you know, is really important for federal programs. As you mentioned, FEMA will address some of these disaster concerns. But federal programs were scheduled to end as of next year. So we feel comfortable that these will be provided by the United States. They will continue. So that's a big relief for us, I think, when it comes to our request. The others are basically support financially to support the government and promote development in Palau so that we can achieve what we call economic resilience and keep our people in the country. That's the gist of the discussion.
Yeah. And I think some of the things that we've been working on from the beginning, post office, may gagawin del federal programs ado mga artilo sa igam close to tiran. Din dire kaltara mlesel original proposal dilir merigid. Tamin sa da tokora discretionary spending. Kadam lang ko assurance rasen nang mada ka mga discretionary, kadam mo mandatory. Singara ulang close to tiran. If you recall, sila agreement trigger 2010, and dim nakal implement rin mo 2018 na lang discretionary. Matara sila tokar mo ramre gila katak murti lo ase tial del will rin ram gila amrigan. Adi manan mo itu telekom self force compact amne de amne mandatory e kadam mora ang erong discretionary e kom continue downgrade. Giril no tisel ngmi lo ase tial del will gila katak to tanya. So kadam rin asulir sige del gora a direction lo ase ngira del maral bedul say. And aigal tialuriora dagal mred mogamangan girel swadr toka swadr al ser kada girel malmol mal noldar say aigal mo o the swadr mortir and this is close to trela girel swadr beside the federal programs tial review is about economic assistance. Seldo swadr in tora gayzay may get tora ang eso no sugid ang smisi abalwat. Ayaya lolmol ma timrid noldar sel mortir. Di umra lo se yel uktak ko makay ada se del lol top del mura buhay al time. Di saya do mo kay sulang.
Sulla Presidente, molto tra questione, Mr. Uduya, I just want to get a sense, the first discussion with the U.S. Team, tokoramle receptive, long tita aderbela. I mean, when you kind of like presented Palau's position on the areas of needs, for example, tokoramle wang raw this week.
Maybe I'll say this. This discussion is the first discussion. While we have some interactions previously, this is the first time we are officially meeting with the Special Envoy from the United States and his team. So this is, as I said, we did not prepare them by sending something in advance. This was the first time they received our request. Of course, it is larger than what we've been receiving previously. So we have to provide them with a lot of information to support that request. So the positive reaction, I could say, that is that we are talking with a very high-level person, represents President Biden directly, and we are in very open and frank discussion, meaning we are being very open with each other. And I think we need to have that openness and have as much information as we can provide to really make sure we justify the amount that we are asking for support, to agree to the common vision of what's good for both Palau and the United States.
And maybe I can just add, I think one of the things البلاد سرادة مضادو يضون يترو أسال بورنيا أمتيرا بلورا مريجل لبا أسير عرنا لا قبل من أولا سكلو توتلن نجيرا إجابة توغل agency الانبول دي قبل الانتيريور غاريا ستيت غاريا 14 الايجنسي قبل من تبتوغ إيجال different program من أيال وقال ذا لو متريا other all be le olgi tanges wortir material adro kara NSA ram NSA ram regen em tumlo blagtak lo ase tongia lo ase ngira del mo to ram regen lo spena ase ngira del mo comprehensive and what was the other word, generous. So we hope lo hace cada malmol merseguido lo das lo hace como mesra arangalel a dos peri oli tra adra lo hace mos perseguido el tigin del mergid lo hace comprehensive and generous.
Malungin ta President ma Minister. I'm going. I got questions. I'm just going to throw it at you. Advisory economic advisory group. Singramal purpose ngira del tora kapak because alakalwi de SM no so is bersera last del CRA.
Yes, thank you. The official name is Advisory Group on Economic Reform. There were several reforms that were proposed in the last review in that agreement in 2010. This group was supposed to monitor the implementation of those reforms. More recently, we are referring to this group as the Economic Advisory Group because basically most of those reforms we've already implemented. So it's really a focus on economic advice as far as Palau's development. As you know, we have the JCM, which discusses annually about defense matters. Now we have an economic group that talks about economic matters. So we think it's really important to have this group meet, not just for the purposes of this review, but also because this is something that I think is important to both the United States and Palau. So we're very happy that we are able to organize this next week.
President Kamla mentioned say we went from mandatory spending to discretionary to
Now we're back to mandatory.
back to mandatory. They clarified was some do discretionary spending abul gula say America la determino saying how you want to spend the money.
The discretionary, I mean, more all be every year at approval. Al sorry, and the more ang arsigid. The altura budget or America wasn't taken. Abol basket.
Because of that, then dim lakad nga igeludo dara 2010 all the way mulmutra 2018. O MCD was nga impact ringi economic status. Okay. I guess I'm leading to this question. Kadira kam mention was it adu amot take a while. Kita tel compactor kita mo discussion amo mereka 2024. That's where we conclude. In the meantime, kita impacted by the pandemic. Mang malbato kay shortfall circuit. Alak alwi the president kam na yung ultimo de kalma Amerika lo ase mga sukuma mara se seraudo dan mo help pertel while we're still talking about the CAPAC agreement. mga ako rastaro sa sige dalak I read somewhere was nga 90 million and they're trying to put that
So
together for us.
when we went to the Ciudad de América Serame, lo dam limit article to call senator, se uling tangi sorti lo se impact ra COVID mergi da mal lo brown. Actually 20 by 2024 es el bodo we pay al balsedeng mal maklom tokol bulo ang ilang eso di tial staru ser kam gid el high income aulen dim nakal sedel ma grant wa may ilalon mong nari arte del senators milus el mora kamiti lo nitra 90 million el mo help pergid we were saying naringel uk ompera sen appropriations committee ra senator Miguel Merebelon meldingan. So there was a Defense Authorization Act proposal tilob and masada kaldel toy 1 and 20 million el mohel periodo a budget de al parte la compact de ila agora base se de 90 million being 20 million al year another sorin bruri mskida eligibility mura sel DFC masada rabes hospital and the last one cyber security mong aye of course ngaram dar olbira golura ram brigger al time egida aure lo bantri of course ngar olbil mun sel muet to pat seru positive san de sangar adram brigger la at least the torrens rigid de magi al bangale de emlas mulon ko se origid mong segida adore na sulil gidel mo they still has to go through the process. Yeah.
Malungil tuta, Mr. President, ma Minister at Chief Negotiator Compact. Kung gora uaisak na setial negotiation lang Chief Negotiator at igirela Compact Review. Bulgulak na sa gel, past 15 years sa review gel, wablel elite tulay gel, el ngesem nera blur bela. Isil domes yung man na change sa situation, heptoka challenges rablulat, ma abelaw mang face. Domes attention ra, au legal el morning, la increase ra, Indo-Pacific, ma direct Tal kantila economy rablu dam na tomele pela ma bikel blu sel do mese namo ngoda a situation ra tele la a gerela al du gerela dal wil rigil ma blu ram dikel le la do mese ra tel movement ra military ra rigil merbela em lamral mum sisi em lamo bel tak na setel belau te gid ya lultu ni am rigel el defender rablu ram dikel el ate agi del dadu ra agampact ngari agora adire como tat saigal activity ra military malu bagel kora infrastructure military melat kel mumru rablu bela again more web tra al selta negotiation malu be com consider separate el deal include the economic package ngania negotiation.
Thank you for that question. We are looking at all aspects of the agreement and reflecting the current situation of the region as well as the changes that were not originally contemplated in the agreement, such as climate change. So we are looking at the overall picture. When we talk about our general discussion, we're talking about economic resilience, as the President has mentioned before. And that includes all of the different factors that impact on that, including challenges like the tensions in the region, raising prices that impact our people's ability to afford basic goods and necessities like fuel and groceries. So we are talking about everything in general as it relates to what Palau needs, which is the purpose of the review.
Sula Ministere, Mela Sel, mengalal do negotiation. Di tial to ora military direct go motat seringi malu ben go guk mal dengar economic package magel federal programs sel belur bela relanga eligible under current term compact.
We are talking about the overall agreement, including the defense provisions.
Sudah negotiate untuk program ni mention na setia video. Kalian na setia na treaty. Era pun change seringi la instead la ujiwa association ujiwa compact. Kemudian nak mo treaty la between the development and sel most very mandatory.
No, we are not changing the type of agreement that we're having with the United States. I'm just referring to it as a treaty, but it's still a compact of free association between the two countries.
The follow-up parcel tingin la sel comment raising asado President in 2019 up until 2019 Chinese market our tourism market represents 50% of our a little over 50% of our market. Current situation now, Michael, regional tensions is affecting the COVID now. It's regional tensions that are affecting the tourism returning back to Palau. Ngarinya aldo doon marahil malubang ngarinya ako ra you mentioned the last press conference wala say because of this na mo gira the direct ask til help pergi ra other ways and tel tension am la create ra problem ra visitors from the Pacific coming here. Mang wala ko ra follow up per se, are we doing any talks? Are we asking for any particular help right now? Because I know you guys are putting together the budget and you're trying to find money from every corner of the system. Yeah.
So, sila ako ra semle ulas wasem grada diversify economy gide sira pura America rame Kurt Campbell ask us to put forward somebody more partner cell team to evaluate that. Maktiri kalul der siang klela minister mo, but we haven't had any meetings yet on that front. But say they wanted to look at ways that American business can come and invest in Palau. Kasi amne discussion I saying marbuto akong bali low headquarter Hong Kong, maybe some of them could come to Palau. Gira der message. Kung bali ramrigel if they're in the region, why not have them in Palau? So gira mulmol message diversification. However, we welcome tourists from everywhere. Yes, 2019 they were 50% of the market. They're still one of the largest tourism markets, Aradrasina. We welcome them in Mirabello. But we want them to understand they need to take care of our environment when they come. The tourists, we welcome them. We are working hard trying to see how we can rejuvenate flights from Korea. Discussion together Korea to maybe try a new airline, Jeju Airlines from Korea, possibly in October. We've been talking in more other Australia. Flights from Australia and Mera Abelao. Kalau diversified tial Maria teri mung oi betul tu 50% di Sina dan Cimri kata mengara. We've got to look at other markets and opening up Australia. Fiji al tama 80% of the tourism is back. Mostly it's Australia. Tiga na depend on close market Asia dia. So we've got to look at all those angles of how we can diversify our tourism industry, but at the same time, our overall economy. Sure.
Tial al ura compact. Tagarnya arm lamal gol sel katorian sardia el mga adu luasi. Kada abela wagilnya ra compact. Sel yamle urung ulit awasi. eventually compact ala po tuiringi e maguruli abela almost of elmo o ileak ramrigel mang modia ka ko radio lingi tanges na ikal major donor countries ra to ko mera so tagi adura compact that is taking place right now say gidong korada at directional bela say okay kada mga adu ending eventually at the back of our mind kasi masil po mereka tiay kidi apela anamos of el tingi yang siya yung kora udas I just want to bring that up if you can have any comment on that.
Maybe speaking more as a minister, I would say, based on our thinking at the time and up till now, we've always been hopeful that Palau can be truly economically independent. But I think that reality is very far off. So we need to plan for the existing circumstance and make sure that we're able to provide the services we need to build our country before we can think about not accepting support from other countries. I think we're still dependent on our partners and neighbors for tourism business, for trade, for economic support. And that's just the reality of the challenges as a small Pacific Island nation. So yeah, we're optimistic, but we need to work very hard because the challenge is greater than you can say other countries are facing.
There's quick solutions to like solving those kinds of problems. So take the independence. Let's bring 200,000 Chinese into Palau and get the economy going, and we can maybe go in that direction. I think I get other bela. We believe in freedom and democracy, and we want to. And so and because of economies of scale, because of the size of where we are, it makes things difficult. So we need to use a combination. And I got resources. Try to build an economy that's diversified, whether it's fishing, tourism, location, and its value for strategic purposes. I got sengar because of that. We use help part of our diversified economy and look at other ways and strengthen it with other areas. So kita ngari alolari amriga rigid ngari angu ngira ngari al beskid selulda sulase degal gira drongi tangar artira agumda sun tunguna kan degal gira waise triga ngari alolari rigid ngari alo meskid ngasih ada luas kata kai ngasih ol mong segida osanya dari di etia giral malmol mo al sumut tamalmol mulos per belau al girala sel al kagarnya la blur ambrigan en giral ngaria al uklo meskid lo ngasih abluat segida golo osanya di ay galo meskid agira lo ngasih orgid mo kadamor set point lo ase kada set di mogid di ay galo meskid la mal diolo ngima kadi lo ngasong oise ma gumra lo ase aparte el dollar se mama gira ase help programa mal mom sisi el blue se amel di gamam el mngismu ora blue mam era rangal gamam sorry el mutelme segida that's the ultimate goal di lagada degal gira daga tidam law do dram ligel ngari lo lari rid mo lo kadam
Minister, about the positions that we take during the compact negotiation, are these, is it just from like your team coming up with these positions, or do you have like a collaboration with other government agencies and maybe the Senate or OIG to on what positions we should take, especially because of all the issues with the U.S. and China and all that. We can have to take very specific positions to protect ourselves, I guess. And also, on the part of that question is, do you, with the other COFA states, marshals and FSM negotiating as well, do we know what their positions are so we can sort of like, I know, get the best deal for ourselves and sort of know what works for them and what works for us?
Thank you for that. Very good question. Yes, we do spend a lot of time, or we have spent a lot of time reviewing all of the documents that are available to us on how Palau is progressing and the challenges we're facing. That includes information that our government prepares, as well as consultants' reports for like education or health or these other environmental reports that are made available by different agencies and partners that we have. But we do go to each ministry specifically and ask them for their input on their needs as part of our discussions with the United States. And that includes going to Congress and speaking to them. As you know, I believe it was 2 resolutions that they had passed requesting us specifically in these talks to bring up some issues with the United States, mostly related to funding, mostly related to our Compact Trust Fund. So we are in discussions with various parties, but we are keeping a lid on a lot of the positions that we are taking at this time. We do discuss this with the President, for instance, as well as some of the other leaders, but we don't do this publicly. So they're aware of the positions we're taking. When it comes to the other 2 FAS states, we have an idea of what they're asking for. Some of it is reported publicly in general in terms of what are the key issues for the different countries. But we do not have a discussion on an official or informal basis between ourselves as to what they're asking, what we're asking. I would also say that it's interesting because while we are separate when we approach the United States looks at us as a group, as a freely associated state group, and then individually, depending on our needs. And I know you keep referring to me as the chief negotiator, but I'm the chief representative. This is a review. This is, we use the word negotiation a lot, and in the review, there are negotiations that happen, but the official terminology is a review, and my title is chief representative. So just to clarify that, it has a different implication on the review process. This is a 30th year review, not a 30th year negotiation.
It's true.
Thank you.
Minister, come back to review representative. Betul challenges aku mesir kami dah sami lo ai cycle ngabe bulat tebel mala leng cloud to telet malungela tur leme presidente de la time ngani agora timetable tegidal from conclude the negotiation
Thank you for that question. Unlike the other FAS states, which have to wrap theirs up by FY 2023, we have until 2024. But we are trying to see if we can accomplish some key principle agreement earlier than later. But if that's not possible this year, then we will look at continuing the process through next year as well. So we don't want to rush the process and give up some of our requests in the process. So we'll take as much time as we need. But if there's a chance to work with the United States and get something sooner with the other states, then we will look at doing that as well.
Okay. President, kari ka mora minimum wage. So, proposal namora olbira kalulaw, lolonga sa tiyak nga FY 2023. So, nga mate LC kamay tax ringi sel ay proposal sa minimum wage sa tinakal mora private sector.
Everybody.
Oh, illegal. Is it kritikal ako na sa atal kalau speaker ka loldup artial tokoira minimum wage sa private sector. Hindi ka loldup artial kritikal mo ako kamla ere marko yung wali artial el minimum angari ra kabalment. Selurior minimum wage sa private sector umangarang ako kurere melkirel.
So, amle argument ra before sa ulan de kalse damla minimum wage. Ada kalse la government funder sel angarin mora adra government. Mung nga ka ko mesay lo ase tial lot de budget lo ase ngari audo de kada mogut muklia angarin mora adra government. O tin mora bira ko lo ase mo pasara minimum wage. So this is our way of saying move the minimum wage forward. Ilangiral makal manain. Kada lo mentrir, of course it tocar other mother do till direct, but kita umrah saya giril makal maral tablo. Dekat saya entertainer imo, dekat entertainer imo. Giril makal maral tablo. Mung tial blada proposery, answer a question lo say namos other pasara minimum wage. That's saya ukos nga karin. That's why we did what we did. Question is, should we pass it? Yes, it's time. It's long overdue. Later last year, the year before, but 2016.
Mr. President, Dr. Lado, Mr. Telbachet Blam, submit an initial 3 million increase in Moraru with other government. Dia lang aja ka other government lugar na minimum wage. Kaya kita sebel mo.
Dia ngari.
Kaya kita sebel mo hapen sel sugum tilagidal. Minimum tilagidal 75 cents increase in Moraru lugar government. Dia kal bol help para private sector. Elal time ek mama mering compete ra government tilgira employees. Kadang oi titra ad meptorio emergoe government tapik apertir. Material das ak mugelet sabiul aska president mel derel bol consider incentives el mora private sector. Mabol semamal el hire ad lurior el compitra salary ad lurior government.
Malung irul daso. Di mebodo mesa habluram regele trigam katatan mesa tertora minimum wage. Celebration minimum wage and degalo sada incentive. Derang oklam lamas, raladan oklam lamas, so we need to do it. Kogelo bagem lo ase self fear gao, lo ase rada toda private sector more government, amral fear. And that's why ang giya girel makal maral tablong. Degal siya del nga imo nga oite imo. Ilang gira la private sector ma government lo sisyo. Saya meng aigel la nga olbira kolulaw. Meeting regi delo mgira senator ele ase tomorrow ra minimum wage. Kada bring asulir and I think our minister am larse. Let understand there's an importance of saying gira maral minimum wage. Lo mgira tel brother proposing in our budget. Ela tadi mo determine lo saying how much they're willing to do and how soon they're willing to implement. Di gidam nadar sen mo lo saying we can do it. Kami aba TCL idip make a decision. And we're ready to support them, help partir Ako ra di sila nga ang iwala ra state visit to ay sila ang ilo say kami amal behind. Kami already $4 ang minimum wage kami. What's important sel change salary scale government it affects everybody. Ilechum ko kobanggal ngario emili goringel ngarbabel global morbabel dire. And that's what's going to happen in the private sector. And they'll say el milsura 350 lame 425 again sura 425 adi continue ngab dire mom kita no say nga dega value na. So it helps everybody move up. And that's what happened with the last round of minimum wage. Dim naka incentive, dim naka business close, and we moved on. Economists tell us, say in 1980s, sige the argument say close our business and model sa survive am problem. So latest, latest, and maybe say Nobel laureate, tamne put say now economists have changed their thoughts. So say if it's the right amount, it's actually helpful. Technical, di ka mo klorung ako ni why gal operator ay radio station amal big kasi tiya mo mamaringa. Di maybe you're going to have to increase your sale announcement to cover a cost. But one of the examples, Gulus Perry, one of the senators, kasi kami doon average strong al truck line. Labor cost is strong maybe 10%. I say, al sum ka babol rengel salary ra adro ko am dabol salary te. I say, kamla increase ra aududi ra 100%, and diesel wages cost adi minginas ra 10%. So that means enggal ara laklo lamas ra 10%, and di ududi ra adam lamas ra other 10%. Because most of those per klalo agi damla ra kre ra blur belau. Sell impact malubong sell buying power ada bay klo anu al sum kada nga sa ududen. And who's going to be paying more? Of course, kita export kita tourism. Sell mer tourist they're going to pay more than the mohara or other lower hotel, ma other lower restaurant, ma other tour operator. El time tegalo ship tourist am sekadra Hawaii, am sekadra Hawaii boring $15 an hour lower hotel. So ngarama ngaliyad lower hotel agil di 350. Those are the questions that we need to ask. It's up to us to decide what they need to earn. At it take care of family tir. Eman mol mol takartel niya sa klara la no. Mang newil nagatagil ngil wase close to 3 mo wodala. Ngadarella SS el diol nga sige. Now we need to help trigger mri loro rabe kalsins en mga sertir. Waigel di lumax. Startera ang ariyo mongoldo bertian maran mo breakter ba.
Sula Mr. President, lagi red loger ngel manager Bank of Hawaii. Kung magara umdo dra adri $15 an hour ela. En bela.
Exactly.
E minister agul Mr. article ra. Valentine's ceremony. Sign ra no agreement lo ngela EDB. O Minister Udoy Gamles, sign MOU lo ngela Director General IDB kira 5 million loan el meri formula al-ula utility ra blur bela. Sendere al open up ra private sector mang maswir lo ruta. Adengi masuar maran marat sebela.
Thank you. Yes, earlier this week I did sign the loan agreement with Asian Development Bank. This was for what we call Tranche 2 or Part 2 of a $10 million loan to PPUC under a policy-based loan. So we call it a PPUC PBL. And that loan comes with requirements for PUC to improve its operations. These funds are targeted towards improving their services, what we call revenue enhancement, so that they can charge more money for the services that they provide. As you know, in the law previously that created the current PUC, they're not allowed to raise rates for like water collection until, or charge for water services until the quality has improved. So this money will also go to improving the services for PUC so that they can increase their revenue and not request government subsidies. You're correct, the policy for the government and PPUC is to look at best ways of operating that provide the best service at lowest cost possible, which is why we're doing this IPP with a company to provide renewable energy to Palau and at least lock in the prices for generating electricity. So this is an example of how the private sector can participate with PUC. Of course, a lot of the projects that are built by government are contracted out to the private sector. So this loan should help increase the business activity and help pay wages that are used in the economy to raise the economic activity while tourism is down.
Sorry, one last follow-up, Minister, following up on the PPUC. There was a letter from the PPUC CEO to the National Congress citing the concern with the new tax law and how it would affect PPUC, especially treating it as a regular business and having to have that 10% added to its services, and how that's going to be translated into cost for the customer. What do you say about that?
If you, thank you. That's a very good question, and it's a good point to bring up. The law that created PPUC created this to be a company, not to be a government agency that's subsidized. So the good thing about this law, you can think of it like a sales tax. When you buy something in a country, and like in the United States, you'll see that there's part of the receipt that says sales tax. So the VAT is like that. The tax is on the consumer. So you can see for all those businesses that are participating in the VAT, how much of that price is tax. And I think that will help consumers as well as businesses to operate more efficiently. So your question is basically, will it impact PPUC? Yes, but right now they're not paying taxes. And if they are a company, they should be paying taxes like every other company, right? So this is the most efficient way to provide services and collect taxes for the country. PUC is not the only business in town, and part of the purpose of the tax reform is to shift the burden from the local population to the tourist population. Right now they pay less in taxes than other sectors like household sector. So this balance will be very visible. You'll be able to see the difference once we start collecting under the new tax system. So yes, there will be an impact, but not directly on the company, because the PGST runs through the company and goes directly to the consumer.
The concern that was raised by the PPUC CEO is that it will impact the cost of power to the local consumer. How is that going to be mitigated, if it is going to be mitigated?
We have many different programs assisting PUC on becoming a better company. Some of their challenge is just because Palau is a very small place. And other challenges are we are transitioning from a government agency that's used to receiving subsidies to a business. So they need to operate more like a business and be more efficient and provide services. But we are also helping people directly. So yes, the cost may look like it's higher, but there are people who need help regardless of the price. So we have the Lifeline subsidy, we have the 10-cent up to 500 kilowatt hour assistance to all residential customers. We are pushing out solar kits for residential customers through NDVP. and we're putting up the IPP, the independent power producer, the solar farm in Ngapang, which is still underway. And that will help reduce some of the costs. So yeah, maybe it'll increase in taxes how we are implementing the new tax reform, but we are also addressing costs to customers in other ways. One of those ways is what the President mentioned earlier, that all of the employees receiving salary and wages in Palau who will be taxed under the new system will get their taxes back at the end of the year. So we can't just look at PUC and say people will be worse off because of the tax system. We have measured all of the changes in the tax reform to make things better for the household sector and individuals. So it's an inaccurate statement that PUC has made.
على ذيك بوبلغ تقلة later راسي ورا PPUC highlight factor say people are still misunderstand the new tax, right? And that is part of our responsibility. Help rather more understanding. I go through PUC all the time pays taxes because everything that they use in PUC, whether it's chlorine, whether it's fuel, whether is taxed. You just don't see it. Whether it's GRT plus the fuel tax plus the import tax. Those are all taxes that are in products that PUC are using now. Now, if PUC are part system, it means that they won't get credit for the taxes that have been paid, and anybody that uses the services will not get credit for those taxes that have been paid previously. Because whether Tomara Blue Bay, Tomara IP&E, they won't get credit for the taxes that have been paid there. So, gira de només arangalel tial system. And sell overall impacted well the last one. I say it's probably with the new system, it's going to impact about on average 3% is what was, and that's why I say di win other other below marturista mo cover sell burden. The other below refund the tax and mortir or sell income tax and mo take care sell the burden or tiram mo only, and they're getting. Other below are getting anywhere from 8 to 12% back, or on average 10% back. So, other below basically are getting it back. So, I think Tiayo regidel al explaining in Mararad and sel kurang sa airway in these state visits explaining in Mararad girem lombe sa arangalel tial system. The PGST is only one component. In fact, Coro State milu sa merkama say Nutel edra kamamal back into the PGST lang. Agim na realize I said we're going to lose more alagim ngar alsel. We a letter CEO or PPUC in Melo. I say, I'm sorry we made a mistake and we need to be in it because otherwise we're going to actually charge people more because we're out of the system. But anyway, we need to help people understand that I say there's multiple levels, and the idea I say we want to make sure that no matter what, there's only 10% in the tax that anything that anybody consumes, not multiple layers. For example, ngel adro tratama ahara dengi, oye, esel dengi asel ngwa creditory if pair ngarisel PGST blel peri and mora a PG, but if he doesn't, hindi kasi ngusel el creditory girel say. So we need to help people understand the system so that tamamdu los peri. Hindi sel ko teklo tutra kada trial balance rin mo fail mo rabek la. So
Only one last follow-up, then that'll be my last question. President, you mentioned the tax refund, so below to the 15,000 and below, right? And sa irel muto ngusel income tax refund at tip. Minister, based on tax information na mo labi. still 15,000 and below, so represent rawak ng ilang population.
Say that again. The number of people who are,
Falls in that.
I don't recall the specific percentage, but it is most people. Yes. Originally, we had proposed a lower level, and we were using affordability, low-income statistics that we generate from the Planning and Statistics Office. But when we were discussing with Congress, they wanted to include more people, and most people earn up to 15,000 as a group in government, especially. So we are helping almost most of the population with this reform, and it's Palauans that receive the refund.
Mr. President, agora mo last
question, okay.
Tangarian ada lo Mr. Press Conference.
Oh,
Sorry lo ke kumlase. Terga resta minister sa tangarger mendalo bangemerela.
Dagi was sel gimsal betol ngartiang mo 2 hours katakalkal mo 2 hours sa press conference ri. Mukka kadora Ministry da Finance amle to kora compact ko focus ertiang. E ok next to material baby our ministers mo. Diri kan sel ministers we we change it up a little bit. Sulang ra ngilera of course the vice president ta uknora kwam de kalo bangged di sulang ra amal ngilgera kita amal mrenga sulil blol el me to kawil garmi mo kada blol kamangan ngara a press conference but just some things I want to announce ngari sel small grants deadline assembly girel August 19 which is Friday. Kada mo extend rin August 29. Andriga po kasar adam na apply so we want to extend and make sure people apply to get small grants. Kadire kal so adam utiarte al mrenga sulir tirgel tira auriol mrenga kabelmente u tokubet sensis tirela. So very special happy birthday and more Helbert Martin ma Koharan Kotaro. Tirga ngara Ministry of Justice. Terikan mal happy birthday mora orang saang mingidap ngara MPII adire kan ngara MOF Nadine Oitrong lastly ngara MOS Irvin Ringen. Oh, next page. Nakmanomre the last. Ngara MOE Ivan Rulo madire kan ngara Ministry of Health and Human Services Franny il team Mlame Sali. Again, my last. Redal Silsil, the wing happy birthday Mori, Kayla Shiro, Nara Parole Board. The man bring a solir trial and Nangel Belau, Malol, and Nasser, and sure other Belau. Wish them a very happy birthday to go with Silsir. Command Sulang, Dios el Mol Mulum Tangatara Abalwad, Mar other Belau Rogui, we get a Rogui. Command Sulang. 2 weeks from now. Oh, sudah.
Okay, tagida orokole la press conference rigre lalsil sendi solo ay solo se gamno albangal bebir technical difficulties ma arangale la tel press conference ma posto tra social media rauriul time ma mansaul mmi igang ma auriulo.